Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast. And today I am going to go over my review of AEW's Dynamite. Now, before I get started, man, this is probably not going to be your normal review that I normally do. To be honest with you, I didn't think Dynamite was definitely a newsworthy night, and that's why we're doing a review. We're going to talk about everything that transpired last night when it pertained to Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson. That was pretty much the highlights of Dynamite last night. The matches really didn't lead into anything, or not going to lead into any matches at All Out. So really just going to be pretty much talking about the Jon Moxley situation as well as the Bryan Danielson situation. So speaking of Jon Moxley, let's start with Jon Moxley first. Jon Moxley kind of shocked the world last night. Jon Moxley ended up showing up on Dynamite last night. He has been off the scene since Forbidden Door. I believe it was around June. He has been off the scene. Now, there was speculation that Jon Moxley was in fact in England this past weekend around All In, but he was not at All In. He was not scheduled for a match at All In, but he was in England. I think he was at one of the independent shows in England. I believe one of Rev Pro's shows. So he was in town when AEW was in town for Wembley Stadium for All In. But Jon Moxley comes out to the ring last night. The fans erupt. The fans are shocked. He comes out to the ring. He is greeted by Tony Schiavone. Now, Schiavone asked Jon Moxley what's been going on. You know, where you been, yada, yada, yada. Jon Moxley came in looking completely like a heel. Like, he was pissed off, he was arrogant, he had this, chip on his shoulder. He didn't really disclose a whole lot of what was going on, but what he did disclose was that he had called out Darby Allin. It looks like there's some unfinished business here between Jon Moxley and Darby Allin. Now, Darby Allin had a high-profile matchup against Jack Perry recently at All In that coffin match, where Jack Perry was victorious in that matchup and was able to walk out with a TNT title. So I was a little confused and taken back why Moxley had called out Darby Allin. But the biggest takeaway of what Moxley was talking about with Schiavone was that he told Schiavone and whispered to Schiavone that they do not own the company anymore. Now, after Moxley said this, man, the floodgates online went insane. Like, everybody was talking about this, that, and the other, and everything else like that. So I was really kind of trying to do my research and really look into what Jon Moxley really was talking about, or what the hell he meant when he told Schiavone that they don't own the company anymore. A couple of things popped in my head instantly, and the first thing that popped in my head was Shane McMahon. Now, obviously, Shane has had some ties with AEW. He's had conversations with AEW talent, and he actually had a conversation not too long ago with the current CEO with Tony Khan, somewhere, I believe, in Dallas, where Shane McMahon and Tony Khan had a private meeting. There was a picture taken to pretty much solidify that there was a conversation that took place between Shane McMahon and Tony Khan. Now, when Jon Moxley made this crazy-ass announcement, this cryptic message, if you will, like I said, the internet floodgates, man, were just wide open. Everybody was saying this, that, and the other is going to happen. I think a couple scenarios. Number one, like I mentioned a minute ago, Shane McMahon, I think, plays a big factor into this storyline on what Moxley's going to be doing. With that being said, it looks like Moxley also, later on that night, added another addition to this possible stable, which, again, is my second reason why Moxley said what he said, is because I think Moxley is creating a new stable, and it looks like the newest member to that stable is Marina Shafir. Now, a lot of us, we haven't seen Marina Shafir on AEW television for quite a while. She's been predominantly on Ring of Honor, but it looks like Jon Moxley had brought in Marina Shafir to be a part of this makeshift stable, if you will. With that being said, I mean, like I said, man, this could be something where Shane McMahon comes into AEW. I know it's been heavily rumored that he was going to be joining AEW. This could be a new stable. But again, man, this is very interesting. I mean, this could play out for the next couple of weeks. I know AEW has another go-home show, I believe, for All Out next weekend. So we're probably going to get more insight of what the hell is going on with Jon Moxley. But it looks like he's creating his own faction. And maybe, just maybe, Shane McMahon has a lot to do with this new faction, or maybe it's some kind of angle here where Shane McMahon is taking over AEW Dynamite. So again, this is very intriguing, and again, this was probably one of the highlights of last night's Dynamite. The other highlight was Bryan Danielson, and I really want to talk about that and what happened with Bryan Danielson. But before I get to Bryan Danielson, there was also a little bit of a back and forth segment here between Adam Page and Swerve Strickland. Now, Adam Page had a match last night against Ishii, which was it wasn't a bad match. It was a decent match. It was the opening match of Dynamite last night, and it was a solid match. I'm not going to sit here and say that it was a bad match. But after the match, though, Page was confronted by Swerve Strickland, and they got to a face-to-face. They exchanged words, and it looks like Swerve had issued a challenge to Adam Page and it will be official that it will be Swerve Strickland versus Adam Page at All Out in a steel cage match. Now, when this was announced, man, I was definitely excited. These two guys have a great rivalry going on in AEW. Every time they get in the ring, they tear the house down. This cage match is going to be one of the best matches, if not the best match on All Out, in my honest opinion. Definitely looking forward to that as well. The other thing that happened last night was MJF. MJF came out to the ring, grabbed a microphone. He was talking about Will Ospreay. Says that he has unfinished business with Will Ospreay. But after that, he was interrupted by Daniel Garcia. Daniel Garcia comes out, he attacks MJF, pretty much has a heartfelt message to MJF and says that, you know, it was hard for him to be escorted out on a stretcher and having his mom watch as he's being escorted out on a stretcher from the injury that he sustained from MJF. So it looks like there is going to be a match between MJF and Danny Garcia, which I'm absolutely all for. And obviously, there's some unfinished business there between MJF and Daniel Garcia. Now, the other highlight of the night, like I mentioned earlier, was Bryan Danielson. Everybody wanted to know what the future of Bryan Danielson was going to be, especially after he had beat Swerve Strickland at All In for the AEW World Title. Now, I will admit, you know, I told you guys this last week that my belief was that Bryan Danielson, if he were to win the belt, he might vacate the belt and take a part-time leave of absence. That's not going to happen. Bryan Danielson announced last night that he is not going anywhere anytime soon. Now, he will retire, he said, from full-time in-ring wrestling if he loses the AEW title. Other than that, it looks like Bryan Danielson's not going to go anywhere, and he's going to work a part-time schedule. Now, he will stop working full-time, like I said, once he would lose, or if he does lose, the AEW World title. After he had mentioned this, Jack Perry is shown on the Titantron. Perry, he shoots some jabs at Bryan Danielson. He talks about his accolades and what he's done in his career, and Jack Perry issues a challenge, or accepts the open challenge from Bryan Danielson. It looks like it's going to be Jack Perry versus Bryan Danielson for the AEW World title at All Out. A couple of things about this, man. Like, it was kind of one of those things where I was kind of like scratching my head thinking, like, why is this going on? Because Jack Perry just had a great match with Darby Allin for the TNT title. It was a great match. But putting Jack Perry in an AEW World title situation, I don't know about that. But again, I don't know if this is going to be something more than just Jack Perry versus Bryan Danielson. Is Jon Moxley going to be involved in this? Is Jon Moxley going to be the next in line to dethrone Bryan Danielson? Because it looks like Jon Moxley has left the Blackpool Combat Club, and now he is creating his own faction, possibly with the help of Shane McMahon. So again, there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of bubbles out there that everybody's trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And like I said, man, in my honest opinion, I do think that we will see Shane McMahon in AEW relatively soon. I really do, especially with the cryptic message from Jon Moxley last night. Looks like Moxley's creating a new faction. He tells Shivani that they don't own the company anymore. This could be a great angle for Shane to come in and kind of be like taking over, if you will, of AEW. I know some fans are kind of pissed about this. I know there were some fans online that I was checking last night, checking out some of their stuff on Twitter last night, and a lot of the people that were saying on Twitter were kind of the same thing I was saying about AEW, that this is kind of giving off WCW 2000 vibes. And I started laughing because I was like, man, damn, I said the same shit for the past few months. And do I think that's the way they're going? No. But I will say this. Obviously with the TV deal hanging in the balance, I know, Tony Khan has to do shit differently than what he was doing for the past few years. We're not going to get the same AEW that we got in the first 3 years, ladies and gentlemen. That's just not going to happen. A lot of the talent has gone from that first 3-year stint. The direction of the company is a lot different than the first 3-year stint. The tag team division is really not a tag team division anymore. No matter what anybody says, it's just not a tag team division anymore. A lot of people are leaving. A lot of high-profile names have left since the beginning of AEW. Cody Rhodes, Jade Cargill, and there's going to be many more talent from AEW that's going to go over to WWE relatively soon. And I mentioned those names: Wardlow, Ricky Starks, and that's just to name a couple. There's going to be a transition phase here between WWE and AEW, and they're going to be swapping talent most likely in the near future. I mean, we just got Ricochet debuting at All In, which was great. He had his debut match last night against Kyle Fletcher, which wasn't a bad match. I think I was expecting a little bit more out of Ricochet in that match. But again, Ricochet, it looks like the Ricochet from old school NXT days, so I'm all for it. But like I said, the profile, what happened last night was a lot of based around what Jon Moxley had said, the cryptic message that he said to Tony Schiavone about that they don't own the company anymore, and Bryan Danielson. Those were the two highlights of AEW Dynamite last night. And I think Moxley just shocked the world what he said last night to Shivani, and then, have him, ties to Marina Shafir. Marina shows up. She ends up attacking one of the AEW security staff backstage with Jon Moxley. Looks like she's aligned herself up with Moxley's new stable. Now, I don't know who else is going to join this stable. I have no clue. I was kind of taken back seeing Marina Shafir join the likes of Jon Moxley. I did not ever see that was going to be a situation. Never saw her actually joining Jon Moxley. I never thought that was going to be a possibility, but it actually happened last night. So who knows what this is going to be. But I will say this, and then some people actually said this to me after AEW went off the air last night, that there could be a very good possibility here that we have a Outsiders 2.0 kind of deal here with Jon Moxley's new stable, where we have old WWE talent that are forming a stable taking over AEW talent, because obviously Jon Moxley used to be a former WWE talent, as well as Marina Shafir when she was working with NXT. So again, this could be something that, could really, set the tone for AEW. We don't know yet. I'm not trying to put the cart before the horse. I'm not saying this is the shot in the arm that AEW needs. But I will say this, if Shane McMahon does walk through the AEW doors and we see him on national television, that's a humongous shot in the arm that AEW needs. That's a shock and awe like you would not believe, because I can tell you right now, as a fan, and a fan that's been watching this since day one, since AEW Dynamite became a thing on television, nobody in their right mind ever thought, even then till now, that we would ever see a McMahon walk through an AEW door. Not Shane, not Steph, not Vince. Nobody ever thought that we would see a McMahon walk through the door of AEW. I think right now it's a very high probability that we will see a McMahon walk through the doors of AEW and be shown on national television here relatively soon. That's just the vibe I'm getting, man. I think Shane will be joining AEW, and I think we will be seeing Shane on AEW television relatively soon, because just what Jon Moxley did last night and the comments that he made about towards Tony Schiavone about them not owning the company anymore, this is right in Shane McMahon's wheelhouse. He comes in as a heel. He comes in as an asshole. He takes over the company. Him and Tony Khan have this little mind games back and forth. Who's taking over this, who's taking over that. Tony Khan has Team AEW, and then Shane McMahon has his own team, and he's trying to dethrone Tony Khan and destroy everything Tony Khan has built over the past 5 years with AEW. I think that would be the ideal situation if I was to bring Shane in. And like I said, when initially Shane was announced, or he was speculated to come over to AEW, I gave my scenarios out of what I think Shane should do, and then mainly it was him aligning himself up with the Elite and being the spokesperson for Matt, Nick Jackson, and Okada, and Jack Perry, to kind of be their manager, if you will. And kind of like how a William Regal was the Blackpool Combat Club, but more of an edgier, heel-ish kind of manager role for the Elite. And I don't know if we're going to get that. It might be Jon Moxley aligning himself up with Shane McMahon and this new faction. And Shane and this new faction are going to run roughshod on the AEW roster, ultimately possibly causing an inner turmoil battle between Shane's AEW and Tony Khan's AEW. I think that's the way it's possibly looking. Again, it's just my opinion. I'm not sitting here saying this is official or anything else like that. That's, pump the brakes. I'm just saying, if I was going to bring Shane in right now, especially with what Jon Moxley said to Tony Schiavone last night, it just fits in Shane McMahon's wheelhouse for him to come in as a heel and have these mind game battles, if you will, between himself and Tony Khan. And Jon Moxley and Shane try to take over everything that Tony Khan has built over the past 5 years in AEW. That's how I would bring Shane in if AEW and Tony Khan were to decide to do that. But like I said, man, this wasn't going to be a normal review, because to be honest with you, last night, Dynamite match quality wise, it just wasn't there, man. Yes, we got the in-ring debut on Dynamite of Ricochet, and it wasn't a bad match. But other than that, we got an 8-man all-star tag team matchup, which wasn't that great, and it didn't tell any kind of stories at all. It looks like we're going to have Roderick Strong versus Hook possibly at All Out for the FTW title, which, with all due respect, that title means absolutely nothing. I'm sorry. If you're a fan of the FTW title, I'm sorry. The title means nothing for AEW. It means absolute shit for AEW. I'm sorry. It means nothing. I think Taz needs to take that belt back to his house, put it in the closet, and call it a day. Or put it somewhere where he can bury that damn belt and we never see that belt again, because the belt means nothing, man. It doesn't mean a damn thing for AEW. I know Tony Khan was trying to hype up the FTW title over at the post-show when someone asked Hook about the FTW title. I had to agree with that gentleman that said that, because the FT title, it's a joke. The title means nothing, man. The title is literally irrelevant. That title has not been relevant since mid-90s to late 90s with ECW. It means nothing, man. The title needs to go away, and Taz needs to take it back home and bury that damn title. It means nothing, really. Put it back on the goddamn mantle and leave it there, and that's it. We don't need the FTW title. But other than that, like I said, match quality, it just wasn't there last night. I mean, like I said, mainly it was about what Jon Moxley had said and Bryan Danielson, because everybody was wondering what the future was going to, entail with Bryan Danielson now that he's AEW champion. So to me, it looks like, Danielson's not going anywhere. Even if he were to lose that belt, I can tell you right now, I don't see Danielson fully on retiring. He literally said verbatim that he's going to retire from full-time in-ring work. Doesn't mean he won't work a part-time schedule. Doesn't mean he won't have high-profile matches. It doesn't mean that he might not go after another AEW World title again. It's just as far as a full-time schedule of him being on AEW weekly, if he loses that belt, that's not going to happen anymore. But I don't see Bryan Danielson going anywhere anytime soon. I know some people were even saying that Jon Moxley was going to return to WWE. Bullshit. He hated his run in WWE. Absolutely hated it. And what Moxley's done with AEW, he's done a fantastic goddamn job in AEW compared to what he did in WWE. And what I mean by that is, if you look at his singles run from AEW to what he did in the singles run in WWE, vastly fucking different, night and day. Not even the same shit. I'm not looking at what he did with the Shield. The Shield's a whole other entity. That was a stable with Rollins, Seth, and Dean. I get that, and it was a hell of a stable, and they shocked the world in what they did in WWE, hands down. I'm talking about Jon Moxley as an individual superstar. I believe Moxley's career as far as a singles competitor has been a hell of a lot better in AEW than what he did in WWE, hands down. Look what he's done in AEW. Multi-time world champion. Multiple fantastic matches. Also GCW champion. I mean, he's gone to other promotions. New Japan IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. IWGP United States Champion. He wouldn't be able to do that shit working with WWE. There's no way in hell that would have happened. Jon Moxley's having a hell of a career, and he ain't going nowhere right now, man. His bread is buttered. His wife works with the company. He's making good money working with AEW. He gets other opportunities to work other independent dates and really do what he wants to do, and Tony Khan allows him to do that. He goes back to WWE. That's never going to happen. So, people saying that he's going to go back to WWE, God bless you. Why would he? To do what? Be fed to Roman? Be fed to Cody Rhodes? Honestly, what's going to happen? Fed to the Judgment Day? No, he's going to stay with AEW, man. I don't see him going to WWE right now. And now what he did last night? No. He's bringing in a new faction into AEW that is going to run roughshod on Tony Khan's AEW, and they're going to dismantle everything that Tony Khan has built over the past 5 years. And the best way they can do that is build a faction and bring in someone else like Shane McMahon to play the mind games with Tony Khan and take over AEW. It just fits perfectly at this point. Like I said, man, I would not be surprised if we don't see Shane McMahon here soon in AEW, and very soon, to be honest with you. But again, this is my review of AEW's Dynamite. I hope you guys are out there staying safe, be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.